It is the final hour of the 2003 24 Hours of Le Mans, and a dark green coupe is about to do something no Bentley has managed since the age of the Bentley Boys. When it crosses the line, it will end a drought 73 years long, longer than most spectators in that grandstand have been alive. The marquee that once helped define this race, then vanished for 7 decades, is about to win it again. This is the story of how a cast-off nobody else wanted carried one of motorsport's oldest names back to the top. The silence. To understand what that moment meant, you have to go back to a time when the green cars did not merely win at Le Mans, they owned the place. Between 1924 and 1930, Bentley took 5 overall victories, 4 of them in an unbroken run, driven by a group of wealthy British sportsmen who became known as the Bentley Boys. They raced hard and lived harder, treating the most grueling contest in the world like a weekend adventure between champagne dinners. One of them, Wolf Barnato, entered the 24 Hours 3 times and won it all 3 times, a perfect record no one has ever matched. These were not desperate men chasing a payday. They were gentlemen adventurers who raced because they could, and they turned Bentley into a household name in the process. The race itself had only been born in the early 20s, and Bentley became the first British marque ever to win it. So in a very real sense, the young event and the young company grew up side by side. That green dominance was not just a run of good results. It was the foundation the entire Bentley legend was built upon. And then it all stopped. The money ran dry, the Great Depression bit, the company was sold, and the cars that had ruled Les Arts simply walked away from it. Decade after decade rolled past. Jaguar won there, Ferrari won there, Ford, Porsche and Audi turned the race into their own private battlegrounds. Through every one of those years, the name that had helped make Le Mans a legend was absent from the entry list. A whole generation of racing fans grew up and grew old without ever once seeing a Bentley take the start. That was the weight waiting to be lifted. Not just a race to win, but 7 decades of silence to answer for. And silence like that does not fade with time. It only grows louder. By the 1990s, Bentley had become something else entirely, a maker of vast, hand-built luxury cars for the very wealthy, better known for boardrooms and red carpets than for racetracks. The idea that this genteel marque might ever return to the brutal world of prototype racing seemed almost absurd. And yet, the appetite to try came from an unlikely place, from the very top of the company that had just bought it. The strangest part is where the answer came from. The car that would end the drought did not begin life as a Bentley at all. In the closing years of the 90s, Audi was preparing its own assault on Le Mans and quietly built 2 rival ideas to see which was faster, an open cockpit car and a closed coupe. Audi chose the open car, the one that grew into the all-conquering R8, and the coupe was set aside almost as soon as it was finished. That orphan design had actually turned a wheel at Le Mans once already in 1999. 2 of those closed coupes ran there that year and both retired, which only reinforced Audi's decision to go with the open car instead. It might have ended up wearing any badge inside the sprawling Volkswagen empire. Then, in 1998, Volkswagen bought Bentley, and somebody realized the abandoned coupe was the perfect vehicle, in every sense, to drag one of the most romantic names in motorsport back to the race it had once ruled. The project was handed to a British operation in Norfolk called Racing Technology Norfolk, and to a chief designer named Peter Elleray, and it was reborn in deep British racing green. From the very first day it appeared, the sneering began. Rivals looked at the Audi-derived engine in the back and decided the whole thing was a German racing car wearing a British costume. A green Audi, they called it, and they said it with a smirk. Elleray would spend years pointing out that the coupe carried more genuinely British engineering than the Italian-built open Audis carried German, but the jibe was catchy and it stuck. It would shadow the project all the way to the finish line. Act 2. The Weapon and the Apprenticeship. Peter Elleray could have taken the easy path, and almost everyone expected him to. The rules of the top class allowed an open cockpit car which is lighter, simpler and cheaper to build, and it was exactly what most of the quickest machines at the front were running. He chose a closed coupe instead. On paper that sounds like a styling choice. In practice it was at least half again as difficult to engineer. A roof meant twin roll hoops that had to survive brutal crush tests. It meant doors, and doors punched holes straight through the side pods and the cooling ducts, holes that then had to be sealed up cleanly every single time they swung shut. It meant a cockpit that turned into a furnace the moment a hot driver dropped into it, with windows that fogged in the rain, a lesson the team learned painfully in its very first year. Elleray had tested the idea both ways in the wind tunnel, once with a roof and once without, and found the coupe surrendered almost nothing in overall drag, so the sleek, closed shape was worth all the trouble it caused everywhere else. Safety pushed him further still. When Johnny Herbert crashed one of the brand new cars into a concrete wall at around 100 miles an hour during testing and simply walked away without a scratch, Elleray persuaded the management to build even stronger survival cells, though one of those replacement tubs dramatically blew apart while it was being cured in the oven before it ever reached the circuit. Elleray always believed part of the reason Bentley chose a closed car in the first place was simple presence. A coupe looks purposeful, imposing, unmistakably a Bentley, and for a marque trying to remind the world exactly who it was, how the car looked mattered almost as much as how it ran. In the back of it sat a twin turbo V8, developed from the Audi unit but grown to 4 litres of direct injection muscle that was, by 2003, unique to Bentley and worth somewhere around 600 horsepower. In its first season, the car had used a smaller 3.6-litre version borrowed almost straight from the Audi R8. By the winning year, it had grown into a 4-litre unit that belonged to Bentley alone, and that mattered because a team running its own engine is nobody's customer. When the finished car arrived, the drivers did not simply respect it, they fell for it. Tom Kristensen, a man who has stood on the top step at Le Mans more times than anyone alive, still describes the car as the most beautiful ever to win the race. The wider racing world agreed, voting it Autosport Racing Car of the Year, the first machine from outside Formula One to take that honour in 14 years. There was one more quirk worth knowing. Bentley ran in the closed prototype class, and for the whole of its 3-year campaign, it was the only car entered in that class at all, which meant that in a strange way the green coupe was racing the open cars and the history books at the same time. But a beautiful car counts for nothing at Le Mans without preparation, and Bentley served a long and humbling apprenticeship first. The victory was the final chapter of a plan that ran for 3 careful years. In 2001, the marquee came back with 2 cars and immediately relearned how cruel this race can be. One Bentley caught fire during a strong run in the rain, and its driver had to climb out and abandon it at the trackside. Before that, in the wet opening hours, that same car had actually led the race outright, a tantalizing glimpse of what the project might one day become before it all went wrong. The other survived to finish third, behind a pair of Audis, and when its crew reached the podium, they did so in white overalls and leather-flying helmets, a deliberate salute to the Bentley Boys of 70 years before. In 2002, the team paired back to a single car, really a rolling laboratory for the new and bigger engine, and nursed it home to 4th. 2 seasons, 2 visits, no win, but an immense amount learned about a race that eats the unprepared alive. For the final push, the team knew that testing on race day would be far too late, so both brand new cars were sent to the 12 hours of Sebring in America first, as a competitive dress rehearsal. a technical infringement in qualifying, dumped them to the very back of the grid, and they had to carve their way forward through the whole field to take third and fourth. It was not a win, but it was proof. The cars had the pace and the stamina, and the team travelled to France that summer, quietly certain they had finally built something capable of going all the way. They knew this was their one shot. Bentley had said from the very beginning that the program would last 3 seasons and not a day more, which meant 2003 was not their best chance at glory. It was their only remaining one. There would be no coming back the following year to fix a mistake. Then there were the men who would drive it. Every great team has a name that history nearly forgets, and the leading Bentley had one sitting right in the cockpit. 2 of the 3 drivers were established stars. Tom Kristensen was already a multiple Le Mans winner hunting a piece of history. Rinaldo Capello, known to everyone as Dindo, was one of the finest sports car drivers of his generation. And then there was the third man, Guy Smith, a young Briton whose biggest previous claim to fame was winning a junior single-seater championship over in the United States. Set alongside 2 of the best endurance racers alive, Smith was the underdog, tucked inside the favourite. He had raced the car in its very first season and tested it through the middle year, so he knew it as well as anyone breathing, but he carried none of the reputation his teammates did. For Kristensen, the pressure was of a different kind entirely. He arrived having already won the race 3 years running, and in 8 decades of Le Mans history, no driver had ever managed a 4th straight victory. Not one. The talent ran deep across both cars too. Over in the sister Bentley, Johnny Herbert had already won here once before, famously in the screaming rotary Mazda more than a decade earlier, so nobody in either green machine was short on know-how. Quick thing before we get to the race itself. If you have a memory of the 2003 24 Hours, or you were somewhere in the crowd at La Sarthe that weekend, put it down in the comments. I go through the comments on every one of these videos, and the Le Mans regulars in this audience always turn up a detail I have missed. Now, back to the question people still argue about to this very day. Because there is an honest complication in this story, one the purists still love to pick apart, and it deserves a straight answer rather than a fairy tale. Bentley did not beat Audi in 2003 the way David beat Goliath. By that point, Bentley and Audi were not really rivals at all. They were the same family. Both belonged to Volkswagen. The engine was Audi-derived. When the mighty factory Audi team chose to sit the race out that year, its crack pit crew, the legendary Joest racing operation, was handed straight to Bentley. And so were Audi's own star drivers, Kristensen and Capello among them. Only privateer Audi teams lined up as opposition, 3 of them, run by outfits like the American Champion Squad and Audi Sport UK, all carrying quiet factory support behind the scenes. So yes, the deck was stacked and critics were quick to sneer that Bentley had simply been allowed to win. But that is not quite the whole truth either. Brian Gush, the man who ran the Bentley effort, always insisted nobody handed his team a thing, and he had a fair point. Volkswagen's formidable boss, Ferdinand Piëch, ran his empire on a single belief, that fierce internal competition made every product better, and there were no soft team orders on race day. The 2 Bentleys were left to fight each other flat out to the very end. There is a telling story from inside the operation about just how real the racing was. Bentley's own management reportedly asked Gush to arrange for the 2 cars to cross the line together in a staged dead heat because Audi had pulled off that photogenic trick once before. Gush flatly refused, calling it a cheap stunt, and told his drivers to go and race. And the whole operation had been built on a shoestring, on a budget Gush once cheerfully described as less than Audi's catering bill. So here is the fairest way to put it. This was a Volkswagen family triumph dressed head to toe in British racing green, and the win itself was completely real because nobody drove the car around the clock on their behalf. They still had to beat their own sister car and everyone else across 24 punishing hours without a single serious mistake. Act 3, 24 hours. When the flag finally dropped, the debate over whether Bentley could really pull this off lasted about as long as qualifying itself. The two green coupes locked out the entire front row of the grid, with Kristensen planting the leading car on pole after setting the fastest lap of the whole weekend. The margin was not close. The pole car was a full 2 seconds a lap quicker than its own sister, and the fastest Audi could not get near either of them. In the race, the number 7 Bentley grabbed the front early on the 27th lap, and from there, it almost never let go again. It led all but a mere handful of the 377 laps that followed. The car was astonishingly gentle on its narrow tyres, so gentle its drivers could run 3 full stints on a single set, while the privateer Audis chewed theirs down far faster. It sipped its fuel too. On a clean run, it could squeeze 14 laps out of a single load, only one short of the thirstier German cars. And married to those long tyre stints, it meant the Bentleys simply had to stop less often than anyone chasing them. It was not completely flawless. The winning car lost a little time when a water system quietly overpressurized, and a little more when its battery had to be swapped twice through the small hours. But none of it changed the outcome. The chasing Audis had their own troubles. Frank Biela, quick all-race, overshot the pit entrance at one point, and the extra lap ran his car dry of fuel. Meanwhile, the sister Bentley of Mark Blundell, David Brabham and Johnny Herbert simply refused to settle for an easy second, closing the gap whenever the leaders stumbled. At one point, deep in the night, it crept to within striking distance, and for a few laps it looked as though the two green cars might genuinely swap the lead. Then the leaders steadied, the gap stretched back out, and the result eased into the shape it would hold to the flag. That was the quiet beauty of the whole thing. With no orders to hold station, the two green cars gave the crowd a genuine fight for the lead buried inside a crushing team performance. And when the sun rose over the circuit on Sunday morning, both were still running like clockwork, first and second, with the nearest Audi several laps in arrears. The best of the privateer Audis entered by the American champion team could manage nothing better than third well adrift of the green coupes. And then, at last, it happened. In the closing hour, Guy Smith, the unknown of the three, brought the leading Bentley around for the final time and swept across the line to take the checkered flag. 73 years of silence ended in that one passing moment. Bentley had won the 24 Hours of Le Mans once again, and it had done it in the grandest style imaginable. First and second, a solid green wall across the very top of the results. For Tom Kristensen, it was a 5th career victory and, far more importantly, a 4th in an unbroken row, something no human being had ever achieved at this race before him. A feat that tied him with the great Derek Bell and left him just one behind the all-time record of 6. For Dindo Capello and Guy Smith, it was a first win at the greatest race of them all, and Capello would go on to climb to the top step here twice more in the years that followed. For Audi, it was a first defeat at Le Mans in 3 years, even if the winner did wear the same corporate crest somewhere deep beneath the paint. It was also the last time a closed cockpit car would conquer the race for another 6 years. And then Bentley did the most Bentley thing imaginable. It stopped. The program had always been planned to run 3 seasons and no further, and the very moment the goal was reached, the team was quietly wound up and the cars were never raced in anger again. They had come back to settle a 73-year-old debt, They settled it in the most emphatic way anyone could ask for, and they walked away right at the top while walking away still meant something. Those cars became instant collector treasures, and years later one of them would change hands at auction for more than $2 million. For the man at the very top of Volkswagen, Ferdinand Piëch, the mission was complete. He had wanted to restore Bentley's racing name, and in a single afternoon and night, his engineers had done exactly that. The morning after the finish, the winning car was paraded through the heart of Paris, its drivers riding along in a pair of vintage 1920s blower Bentleys, the old legends and the newest one rolling down the boulevard together. And as for that green Audi jibe that had shadowed the entire project from the start, its designer Peter Elleray had the final word. He said he wanted just 3 words carved on his gravestone. It wasn't a green Audi. That is the story of how Bentley waited 73 years, chose the single hardest possible way to end the wait, and then walked off the stage the very instant it had won. It remains one of the most curious triumphs in the whole history of the race, at once a slick corporate operation and a genuine act of sporting stubbornness. And perhaps that is exactly why people still argue about it and admire it in equal measure all these years later. Green Audi or not, the record book is not interested in the argument. It simply says, Bentley, 2003, and a gap of 73 years finally closed. If you made it all the way to the end of this one, then you already care about how these machines were built and about the people who bled to build them, and that is exactly who these videos are made for. Subscribe, and I will keep pulling these half-forgotten racing stories back into the light, one car at a time.